The election process is extremely complex.
Election officials have been preparing for every and all possible scenarios.
What may be the most closely watched election of our time.
People are more passionate than ever about politics, and specifically the presidential election.
But there are concerns misinformation could compromise votes.
Once information gets out there into the world, it's very hard to correct.
We're helping you get the facts on security at the polls and the reality of voter fraud.
Well, it doesn't happen much at all.
Why it takes so long to count ballots and get accurate results.
One of the most common misconception people have is that it happens instantly and just automatically.
Now, a special Commitment 2024 program.
Hello from Washington, D.C. I'm National Investigative Correspondent John Cardinelli.
And I'm White House Correspondent Kayla Norwood. Right now, Americans across the country are exercising their right to vote, making a choice for who will be the next leader here in the White House.
Whether it's the presidential race or an open seat on a local school board that's motivating you to cast a ballot, we want to help prepare you for election night.
From understanding how votes are counted to being aware what many election and government leaders see as concerns, among them mis- and disinformation, intentional attempts to mislead you. Leaders we've talked to say there could be an avalanche of false information meant to influence how you vote or discourage you from voting at all.
Fake websites and what appear to be news articles are already creeping into social media feeds. The sites are often created by artificial intelligence, building stories that twist the truth about actual events. It's a miracle. You're clearly here today.
It's me, in the flesh, not artificial intelligence, I promise.
That Maine's Secretary of State, Shenna Bellows, was even able to sit down for our interview. Were you in fact arrested?
I wasn't.
But according to these supposed news articles, she was. She even served time at Guantanamo Bay, and then she was executed.
We were in this awkward position of having to explain to some media outlets like USA Today, but also to some voters, no, I'm alive and well. I'm, here in Maine doing my work.
As the Secretary of State, Bellows is the one in charge of running Maine's elections. That's why she's been targeted. Both a human and AI have written articles spreading wrong information about her, and AI-run websites are becoming more of a problem when it comes to spreading false information.
We started with 40 or 50, and that has just exploded. Right before Election Day, I'll bet it's over 2,000.
Stephen Brill is the co-founder and CEO of NewsGuard, an organization providing tools to counter misinformation. His team is tracking more than 1,000 websites run by AI spreading false narratives. And these sites are making their way onto your computers, phones, and tablets. You're not searching for them, but they're still ending up on your social media feed.
It's thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of views. So the website itself is really just kind of a marker of false legitimacy.
One of the most important tactics.
And it's a real concern for other secretaries of state like New Mexico's Maggie Toulouse Oliver.
My sort of nightmare scenario is that a very real looking or sounding image is put out there, saying something about, the election being canceled or moved to a different day or giving out other erroneous information about the election process.
So in 2024, can people tell if a website is generated by AI? We came out here to find out.
It's like a trick question.
Some people we talked to had a sharp eye.
I'm literally just looking for spelling errors.
Noticing the text looked a little strange.
Insert website name. I think it's fake.
But others were totally fooled by how real it looked at a quick glance.
Kind of looks like the average website to me.
I can't really tell what's created by AI and what's not created by AI.
Believe it or not, there are easy ways to figure it out. As you're scanning, check for phrases that seem off.
AI likes to say in conclusion, and that's something that a lot of journalists won't write.
AI articles also have a lot of repeated sentences, and if it's a headline you haven't seen anywhere else, be skeptical. Look for it from other news sources.
Unfortunately, the impact of lies and disinformation about elections is that some well-meaning people, innocent voters, believe those lies.
Many states are passing laws or starting to introduce laws that address and try to prevent certain misleading uses of artificial intelligence.
AI technology is making it cheaper and easier than ever to manipulate video and audio too. What are called deepfakes have already been leveraged in political robocalls and on social media. Washington correspondent Christopher Salas tells us how to spot them.
What a bunch of malarkey.
That voice sounds just like one you know, President Joe Biden, in a recorded Election Day message.
Voting this Tuesday only enables the Republicans in their quest to elect Donald Trump again. It's important that you save your vote for the November election.
But votes did count that Tuesday, and the voice wasn't really Joe Biden. The recording was generated by artificial intelligence, or AI, intentionally mimicking Biden and intended to confuse or discourage people in New Hampshire from voting in the state's presidential primary back in January. It's called a deepfake.
A deepfake is a computer-created image or voice or video of a person, either a person who doesn't exist but seems real, or a person who does exist, making them do or say something they never actually did or said.
In this case, political consultant Stephen Kramer admitted he paid a magician $150 to create the deepfake audio. Kramer insists his intent was less of a trick and more of a method to make a point.
I think that the people who are legislators realize this is something is a problem. If they want to come after me, well, if that's their attitude, then bring it.
Prosecutors in New Hampshire did bring criminal charges, including multiple counts of voter suppression. The deepfake recording, which only took 20 minutes to generate before being transformed into a robocall, ended up reaching 20,000 people. The robocall represented one of the first times a voice cloning deepfake was used for voter suppression. Other wide-reaching deepfakes have used social media platforms to attempt to influence voting behaviors. In May 2023, Donald Trump Jr. reposted a video on X of a deepfake Anderson Cooper praising former President Donald Trump. That generated video got more than 3 million views. Creating deepfakes like these used to take multiple weeks and could cost thousands of dollars. But with AI and technological advances, they now can be made in a matter of minutes at little or no cost. That raises serious concerns in a democracy.
We cannot have our democracy undermined by ads and by videos and by robocalls when you literally don't know if it's the candidate you love or the candidate you dislike.
That individual going into the voter box must know what you believe in. And that can't be done if someone is deceptively using your name, your image, your likeness. Not possible.
The Federal Communications Commission announced in February that AI-generated audio clips in robocalls are illegal. But so far, deepfakes on social media and in campaign advertisements are not subject to a federal ban, leaving the regulation of deepfakes on social media up to the platforms themselves. Deepfakes and AI-altered content are difficult to spot, so here's some help, starting with deepfake audio.
You want to listen for things that don't quite sound human. And with deepfakes, if you listen, sometimes they will take no breaths when they're talking. And that comes to video or audio. So you may actually feel a sense of breathlessness when you listen.
Next, be sure to take a close look at the visuals.
So for example, the earrings may not be fully formed or the teeth may not be fully formed. As far as deepfake video goes, often the physiology isn't quite working yet. The pieces and parts of the face aren't quite together yet.
And don't immediately assume what you see and hear is correct. Go and verify the message.
Is this message real? We need to go back to that basic message. What do they want from me? Could it hurt me? Can I verify it? And if you can't verify it, don't do it.
The criminal cases are still pending for the man charged with orchestrating the New Hampshire robocall.
The FCC also fined him as well as the company that distributed the fake recording. Next, despite the claims, evidence shows voter fraud is not widespread. So how often does it happen?
We have local trained officials that seek it out.
We look at the real impact of election fraud.
So everyone's going to enter this way.
The security you will and won't see when voting in person. Changes meant to keep you safe and the election process secure.
Election night wraps up without results in some close political races. We get the facts on how votes are cast and why declaring a winner can take so long.
Even after all the votes are counted and a winner is declared in the presidential race, the outcome isn't official until Congress meets right here on January 6th to certify the Electoral College votes from each state.
In recent years, claims of election and voter fraud have accelerated. Evidence shows fraud is not widespread, so we wanted to find out when it actually happens and if it has any real impact.
People love coming here. It's rich in history, culture.
As his feet hit the pavement,
I actually love the entire town.
Marlon Daniels soaks up the history of his hometown.
People want to know where the oldest black municipality is in America.
That town is Eatonville, Florida. The history dates back to 1887, and Daniels wanted to be a part of it.
I said, hey, it's time to get out and see if we can make a difference here in the community.
And this is where our story really begins, when Daniels ran for town council.
What exactly happened?
Looking at the preliminary unofficial results, I won by 9 votes. A couple days later, they say I was winning by 1 vote. And then at the final, they said I lost by 1 vote.
That's when something clicked. He remembered what a man told him outside town hall on election day.
I had a gentleman come up to me and say that he was told to go in and vote for a certain individual for him to be able to live where he was living at.
So Marlon challenged the election and won in court.
I got to take the seat as the elected official here in the town of Eatonville.
So what happened? Voter or election fraud, the illegal interference with an election to try to manipulate an outcome.
It is illegal.
Ambassador Tim Romer is a member of the National Council on Election Integrity, a bipartisan group focused on strengthening our election system. The most surprising thing he told me is that voter fraud isn't a big problem.
Well, it doesn't happen much at all. It's against the law. We have local trained officials that seek it out, that are trained to find it.
Trained officials, like the people in charge of running elections, secretaries of state, are they worried? What concerns do you have about widespread fraud?
I don't have really any concerns about that.
Very limited in Mississippi.
I don't have any concerns about widespread voter fraud.
In Kentucky, I don't have concerns about widespread fraud.
So why aren't elected officials concerned? After coming here and speaking with someone who was a victim of voter fraud, we wanted to answer one question. How many people have been convicted of it?
We started by creating our own database through our own research and using 2 public data sets. The National Investigative Unit found 410 instances since 2016 where some level of voter or election fraud led to a criminal conviction or court action.
You divide that up by the states, that's a couple per state.
96% of those instances involved people committing crimes, from registering fraudulently but never voting to criminal conduct at the ballot box, leading to 14 cases where a new election was ordered or the election was overturned. In all but 1 case, the election in question was municipal, county, or statewide, where the number of total votes are smaller and the margins are thinner.
Presidential elections are even the closest ones. In the last presidential election were somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 and 25,000 votes in places like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia. 2 or 3 people mistakenly trying to vote in those places does not have any impact on the election.
And that's the reality. Voter fraud doesn't seem to affect presidential elections, but it can affect local ones.
Sometimes we get really kind of focused on federal elections, and we forget about these school board elections or these local elections where every vote matters. Those couple votes could switch a school board election. That school board election can impact your taxes.
Local elections, just like the one Daniels was involved in.
It can happen anywhere. I believe in the process. I believe that we handle people that try to interfere with elections one way, but we still don't take away from the American dream of being able to vote.
You can dig deeper into our data on voter fraud. Just look in the investigative section on our app or website.
Any delay in knowing the results of an election can fuel fears of fraud. If this year's presidential election is anything like the last one, we may not know the winner for days. Washington correspondent Jackie DeFusco explains the complex process of tallying all the votes.
It's election night in November. Polls have closed, ballots are being counted, but the night comes to an end with no clear official winner.
I want to know who wins right when the polls close, just like everybody else, but it's not really realistic to expect that.
David Becker is the executive director and founder of the Center for Election Innovation and Research, a nonpartisan organization that works with election officials all over the country. He says the voting process is complex, partly because of the checks and balances involved to ensure accuracy.
It's incredible how well that process works, given how complex it is and how many different parts we're relying upon.
So why does counting votes take so long? And is the process secure? Let's take a look at what's involved. First, your ballot is cast in one of two ways: in person, or the increasingly popular vote by mail or absentee. Election officials track those vote by mail ballots very closely to prevent or catch any fraud.
They confirm in every single state the identity of that voter to make sure they're the right person to return that ballot, and also that they haven't voted before.
And that's where a big slowdown happens. Election workers must verify a voter's eligibility and information, which is usually on the envelope of the returned ballot. Once verified, the envelope is opened and the ballot separated and secured until it can legally be counted.
Everything in the entire voting process has a strict chain of custody.
In 43 states, like Florida, Georgia, and Ohio, election workers can start some level of processing mail-in or absentee ballots before Election Day. In the remaining states, including battlegrounds like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, that processing cannot happen until Election Day, November 5th. If you vote in person, just like with absentee or mail-in voting, your ballot is kept secure until it's time to count.
They go into a locked, sealed ballot box in every single location. That ballot box is not opened again until the tabulation process begins.
The tabulation of all ballots officially begins once the polls close. Unofficial results come in quickly, from in-person votes counted by electronic machines and electronic ballot scanners. The votes coming by mail are also scanned once they're processed, and then the counts are audited for accuracy.
They take some of the paper ballots, they count them by hand, and they compare them to the machine counts to make sure the machines didn't have any significant problems.
Now, it's important to recognize that the unofficial results you see can shift, and the leader can change as all of those votes are counted and confirmed.
When you have a huge number of ballots that are going to be counted last, but they skew overwhelmingly towards one party, you're going to get a shift or a wave in the direction of that party.
That's what happened in 2020, when mail-in ballots were at an all-time high, fueling a fire of distrust with the election process, even despite all of the measures in place to guarantee security and integrity.
We do a lot of training and preparatory work. We have over 10,000 poll workers. These are your friends and neighbors who are on the front line running the election process.
Our elections are incredibly transparent and secure. They're more transparent and secure and verified by the courts than they have ever been in American history.
So this November, as our election officials work to double and triple check our ballot, they're urging Americans to wait and trust the process.
Our democracy is based on the integrity of our elections. And when we lose confidence in that result, our country will have fallen.
Another important point, official outcomes are declared by election leaders based on their final vote count. But you will see races called on election night in the media and online.
That means elections officials and analysts from places like the Associated Press are fully confident based on current vote counts that there is a winner.
Washington correspondent Amy Lou shows us how you can follow the results on our app and website.
Whether it's the race for president, governor, Congress, or hundreds of other hotly contested races in your community, we've got just the ticket for you to track the races on your ticket. Let's start with the presidential race. It's important to remember we don't have a big national election for president. The winning candidate needs 270 electoral votes to win the White House. They get electoral votes by winning statewide elections. And our Electoral College tracker, powered by the Associated Press, will show you exactly where Kamala Harris and Donald Trump stand in each state as votes are counted, and which states are needed to win the presidency. Our interactive map will have easy-to-read details and breakdowns like county-by-county results, or you can track how many ballots have been counted and how many are left to go. And when states are called, you'll see that immediately updated in the Electoral College count. You'll also be able to track hundreds of hotly contested races important to your community, races like city council or school board. We've got you covered from the top of the ballot down to the bottom, giving you the latest vote tallies as they come in. And that's our commitment to you. For Commitment 2024, I'm Amy Lou.
Still ahead, securing the places where you vote and the centers where ballots are counted. The changes made this year to keep you and the process safe. We've talked a lot about the potential impact of misinformation on the election.
But some election leaders that we've spoke to told us their biggest worry is security, ensuring polling and counting locations are secure so that their workers, voters, and the voting process itself are safe.
In the wake of threats and problems in 2020, counties and states across the country are making changes. From Kentucky,
I wish I could say this is the first time I've ever received a death threat in my position and what I do with elections, but unfortunately it is not.
To Maryland.
Love and not so much love letters. Back here are all the not so love letters.
Election officials, their staffs, and volunteers are facing threats online, in person, through the mail, and by phone.
We will take you out.
An all too common trend for those tasked with carrying out and protecting America's elections. According to a recent report from the Brennan Center for Justice, 1 in 3 election officials have experienced threats, harassment, or abuse since 2020, not just on Election Day, but before and after the votes are counted.
These are election officials of both parties, threats to them and their families, largely stemming from unfounded claims that the results of the 2020 election did not represent the will of the people.
They think that we're committing, voter fraud. There's so many checks and balances in place that you can't do that.
So new precautions are now in place for this election year and the future, like panic buttons, not visible to the public, but a lifeline for election leaders and staff if a threat materializes. And more noticeable changes like bulletproof glass.
We were told by the Harford County Sheriff's Department that if someone were to shoot a bullet, it's a type of glass that would deflect the bullet in a different direction.
Stephanie Taylor, an election official in Maryland, showing the critical changes at election offices and polling locations that many would have never thought were necessary a decade ago.
We had a special coating put on all of our doors and windows that reduces the glass becoming shards in a bomb blast.
And in some places, more law enforcement will be present on Election Day. All the votes in Milwaukee County, Wisconsin will be tabulated at this courthouse. And in the spirit of transparency, the process is open to the public.
We are planning on there being a lot of attention and people coming to watch what the election workers are doing.
Inspector Aaron Dobson from the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office is overseeing security.
So everyone's going to enter this way, and we're going to turn our screening equipment around and then head into the cafeteria in that direction. We're considering all the possibilities of what could happen, and we're hopeful that it doesn't, and that's why we're making plans now to ensure that it doesn't.
A lot of work is being done to make sure you're safe at the polls and that the election process isn't interrupted.
And 2 important things to know if you're voting in person this year. If there are long lines and polls close while you're still in line, stay in line. You have a right to vote, and election officials will outline a plan. And if you make a mistake on your ballot, you can ask for a new one and start over.
Head to our app or our website and check out the Commitment 2024 section for information on your local and national races, ballot issues, and information on how to vote.
And join our news teams on election night for information and results as we learn them.
Thank you for joining us.